The night had long fallen over the small town of Riverdale when Officer Jake Carter received the call. A fire had broken out in a residential neighborhood, and several units were already on their way. Without hesitation, he activated the sirens and sped towards the flames rising into the night sky. When he arrived on the scene, most of the house was already engulfed by the blaze. Screams pierced through the roaring fire. A frantic neighbor shouted that a little girl was still inside. Without wasting any time, Jake rushed into the burning house. The heat was suffocating, the smoke burned his lungs, but he continued moving forward, guided by the child's cries. Finally, he found her curled up under a table, trembling with fear. He grabbed her and rushed toward the exit, just as the ceiling collapsed behind them. He collapsed on the lawn with the child clutched to him, under the cheers of the witnesses. The story made headlines in the local media, and within a few days, Jake became a hero despite himself. But the glory was fleeting. A few days after the fire, while returning home after a long patrol, he found an anonymous letter slipped under his door. The shaky handwriting simply read, "Thank you for what you did. But now I need your help. They're hunting me. They're everywhere. You're the only one I can trust." Curious and slightly uneasy, Jake looked down the empty street before going inside. Who could have left him this message? Was it a prank? He decided to ignore it. But the next day, a second letter appeared, accompanied by a black and white photo of a middle-aged man looking terrified. On the back, a scribbled address and another unsettling phrase. "Please, come before it's too late." His curiosity piqued. He went to the address indicated. It was a shabby motel on the outskirts of town. In the room, he found a frightened man, trembling hands around a glass of water. "I knew you'd come," he murmured. "They've already killed my friend. You're in danger." Jake frowned. "Who? They?" The man hesitated before whispering, "Some of your colleagues." Jake's heart sank. He wanted to dismiss this absurd idea, but the man's expression and the fear in his eyes made him realize he was telling the truth. Something dark lay behind this simple act of heroism. And now, he was involved. What he didn't know yet was that this case would reveal a conspiracy that threatened not only his career, but also his life. Jake left the motel with the eerie feeling of being watched. He returned to his car and took a moment to digest what he had just learned. If some of his colleagues were involved, he couldn't talk about it without risking exposing his intentions. He decided to investigate discreetly. The first step was to identify the man who had written those letters. After some research, he discovered that the victim in the photo was named David Holloway, a former detective who had mysteriously disappeared a few weeks earlier. Jake went to the precinct under the pretext of checking some files. While rummaging through the archives, he stumbled upon a series of incident reports that seemed unrelated at first glance. Witnesses of violent crimes, informants, and even former police officers had disappeared or been found dead under suspicious circumstances. Each case appeared to have been closed without further investigation, and each time, a name kept coming up. Captain Howard Reynolds. Jake knew Reynolds well. He was a respected veteran of the department, a man with an impeccable reputation. But the more he dug, the more anomalies he found. Reynolds seemed to have ties to corruption cases, and some of the victims had tried to expose questionable practices before their disappearance. When Jake left the precinct, he noticed a black car parked in the shadow of a streetlight. A chill ran down his spine. Someone had seen him digging through those files. It might already be too late. That night, he received an anonymous call. A masked voice whispered simply, "Stop looking, Carter, or you'll end up like Holloway." Rather than giving in to fear, Jake recorded the call and sent the audio to a trusted contact at the local newspaper. He knew he couldn't face this conspiracy alone. With the help of an investigative journalist, he began gathering evidence on Reynolds' activities and his accomplices. Over the following days, Jake was followed several times. One night, as he was returning home, he found his apartment ransacked. A message painted in red on the wall said, "Final warning." Realizing he had to act fast, Jake gathered the evidence and handed it over to the FBI. The agent in charge of the case confirmed that Reynolds and several officers had been under investigation for months, but lacked the decisive proof to indict them. Jake agreed to wear a wire during a tense meeting with Reynolds. He made him believe he was ready to keep quiet in exchange for money. When he mentioned the murders and disappearances, Reynolds let slip a phrase that sealed his fate. "We've buried people more troublesome than you." The next day, an FBI raid arrested Reynolds and his accomplices. The media covered the story, and Jake, though scarred by the ordeal, was hailed as a hero once again. As he resumed duty, a final anonymous letter appeared in his locker. "Thank you, Jake. Thanks to you, the truth came to light." What an incredible story. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like and subscribe to the channel for more amazing content.